Have you ever wondered what it truly means to live a life without regrets? Elara, a woman etched with the stories of 92 years, sat on her porch swing. The rhythmic creak a comforting counterpoint to the rustling pecan trees. The Louisiana sun, mellowed by the late afternoon, cast long shadows across the sprawling lawn of her childhood home, a home she'd never left. This house, with its peeling paint and overflowing flower boxes, held the weight of a century's worth of laughter, sorrow, and whispered secrets. Elara wasn't just old. She was history incarnate. Her mind, though sometimes a bit foggy around the edges, held vivid memories of a world long gone. She lived through wars, pandemics, moon landings, and witnessed the slow, inexorable march of progress. People came from miles around to hear her stories, to glean some wisdom from a life so richly lived. But lately, Elara had stopped sharing. A heavy stillness had settled upon her, a quietude that worried her granddaughter, Willow. Willow, with her bright eyes and a cascade of auburn hair, was Elara's lifeline. She visited every day, bringing groceries, tending to the garden, and simply sitting with her grandmother, listening to the silence when Elara chose not to speak. Willow knew that something was troubling Elara, something deeper than the usual aches and pains of old age. One sweltering afternoon, as Willow fanned Elara with a palmetto leaf, she gently asked, "Grandma, is everything all right? You seem distant." Elara sighed, a sound like wind sighing through the eaves. "Distant? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally facing the things I've kept buried for too long." "What things, Grandma?" Willow pressed, her voice laced with concern. Elara's gaze drifted towards the overgrown rose bushes, their crimson blooms faded and drooping. "Regrets, Willow. The kind that cling to you like Spanish moss and slowly suffocate the light." She paused and continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made a promise a long time ago. A promise I broke. And it's haunted me ever since." The promise, as Elara recounted in a voice thick with emotion, involved a young man named Bo. They had grown up together, their lives as intertwined as the roots of the ancient oak tree that stood sentinel in the front yard. Bo was a dreamer, a musician with a voice that could charm the birds from the trees. He longed to leave their small town to take his music to the world. Elara, practical and rooted to the familiar comforts of home, promised to go with him. But when the time came, when Bo stood on the dusty train platform, guitar in hand, Elara couldn't bring herself to leave. Fear, disguised as practicality, had paralyzed her. She watched as the train pulled away, carrying Bo and her promise with it. He'd sent letters for a while, filled with tales of smoky jazz clubs and vibrant cities, but the letters eventually stopped. Elara heard whispers over the years, Bo playing in New Orleans, Bo touring Europe, Bo disappearing. "I chose safety over love, Willow. I chose comfort over adventure. And now, here I am, an old woman surrounded by memories, but alone." Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks, tracing the deep lines etched by time. Willow held her grandmother's hand, her touch gentle, but firm. "Grandma, you can't keep blaming yourself. It was a long time ago. People make choices." "But some choices," Elara said, her voice cracking, "define who you are. They shape the rest of your life, and I chose wrong." For days, Elara remained lost in her memories, consumed by the weight of her regret. Willow tried to distract her, reading aloud from old books, playing her favorite gospel hymns, but nothing seemed to break through the wall of sorrow that had enveloped her grandmother. One evening, as a thunderstorm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within Elara, Willow stumbled upon a box of old photographs in the attic. Among the faded images of family picnics and childhood birthdays, she found a picture of a young man with a mischievous grin and a guitar slung over his shoulder. It was Bo. On the back of the photo in Elara's handwriting was a single poignant sentence, "The music I didn't hear." Willow carefully took the photo to Elara, who was sitting by the window watching the storm. "Grandma," she said softly, "I found this." Elara took the photograph, her fingers trembling as she traced the outline of Bo's face. A flicker of something ignited in her eyes, a spark that had been dormant for decades. "He always said I was his muse," Elara murmured. her voice barely audible above the thunder. He wrote songs about me, about our life here, songs I never truly appreciated. An idea sparked in Willow's mind. "Grandma," she said, her voice filled with excitement, "why don't we try to find his music? Maybe there are recordings, old vinyls, something." Elara looked at Willow, her eyes widening. "You think we could?" "We can try," Willow said, her determination unwavering. And so began their quest. Willow, armed with her laptop and a tireless spirit, scoured the internet, searching for any trace of Bo's music. She contacted jazz historians, musicologists, and online forums dedicated to obscure musicians. Days turned to weeks and weeks into months. They hit dead ends, encountered false leads, and faced countless disappointments. But Willow refused to give up. She knew how much this meant to Elara, how finding Bo's music could potentially heal a wound that had festered for a lifetime. One rainy afternoon, after weeks of fruitless searching, Willow received an email from a music archivist in New Orleans. He had stumbled upon a collection of old reel-to-reel tapes salvaged from a defunct recording studio. Among them, he found a tape labeled Bo Bayou Ballads. Willow's heart leaped. Could it be? She immediately contacted the archivist and arranged for him to digitize the tape and send her a copy. When the digital file finally arrived, Willow rushed to Elara's house, her hands shaking with anticipation. She plugged her laptop into Elara's ancient record player and pressed play. The music began, a warm, soulful melody that filled the room. It was Bo's voice, clear and resonant, singing of love, loss, and the bittersweet beauty of life. The lyrics were filled with stories of their childhood, of stolen kisses under the pecan trees, of dreams shared and promises broken. Elara listened, her eyes closed, tears streaming down her face. It was as if Bo was right there in the room with her, his music bridging the gap of time and distance. As the song ended, a fragile smile touched her lips. "His music," she whispered, "it's beautiful." They listened to all the songs on the tape, each one a poignant reminder of a life lived and a love lost. And as they listened, Elara began to change. The heavy stillness that had settled upon her began to lift. The spark in her eyes grew brighter. She started sharing her stories again, not with bitterness and regret, but with a newfound sense of acceptance. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the porch swing listening to Bo's music, Elara turned to Willow and said, "You know, Willow, I still regret breaking my promise to Bo. But listening to his music, it's made me realize that his dreams didn't die, even if our love didn't last. He put his heart and soul into those songs, and they're still here, touching people, inspiring them." She paused, then added with a newfound wisdom in her eyes, "Maybe that's the secret to living a life without regrets, Willow. Not avoiding mistakes, but finding a way to make peace with them. To learn from them. To turn them into something beautiful, something that can touch the lives of others." Elara continued, "I didn't go with him. I didn't hear the music as it was being written. But perhaps in the end, the music found its way back to me. And through that music, I found a way to forgive myself." Elara began teaching Willow about the plants and flowers in her garden, imparting a knowledge passed down through generations. Though her body grew weaker, her spirit soared. Elara passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by the scent of roses and the sound of Bo's music. Willow inherited the house, the garden, and the legacy of a life lived with both regret and resilience. She continued to share Bo's music with the world, ensuring that his voice and Elara's story would never be forgotten. And every time she sat on the porch swing, listening to the creak of the wood and the rustling of the pecan trees, she remembered Elara's words, "The secret to living a life without regrets is not avoiding mistakes, but finding a way to make peace with them." Have you made peace with yours? Because in the end, it is not the absence of regret, but how we transform it that truly defines our lives.